What is the Bible and what is its meaning? Does it have only one meaning, or are there many legitimate interpretations? How would you know which meaning is the correct one? Most people are at least somewhat familiar with the book called the Bible. If not, they've heard of it or have seen a copy, and just about everyone has an opinion about its meaning. Imagine you saw the Bible for the very first time in your life. As you hold it in your hands, where would you begin seeking to understand this book? Where do you start? This is where we want to start, to help you to begin to understand the message of the Bible. Our goal is to help in a very practical way to encourage you in beginning your own journey in understanding the message of the Bible. There are a number of places where we could begin our discussion, but we'd like to start at a very practical place. The very first thing necessary in order to truly understand the message of the Bible is to obtain a good translation. The Bible is both an ancient book and a foreign book. It was written in two languages, ancient Hebrew and ancient Koine Greek. So unless you know these languages, you will be dependent on a translation. Since our study is in English, we will need a good English translation. What constitutes a good translation? This is a complex question, but simply put, a translation conveys the meaning of a term or terms from one language to another. The translation that comes closest to conveying that meaning is the better or superior translation. Of course, it is always best, if possible, to know the original language. And if you want a deeper understanding of the Bible, you will want to learn those biblical languages. Someone has compiled a list of English translations beginning with the 1388 Wycliffe Bible and list over 200 translations in the English language. 2/3 of those translations were produced after 1960. One wonders if the English language has so radically changed in the last 40 years that it demands a need for more than 130 translations. But that's a different subject for a different video. The traditional standard Bible used in the English language has been the King James Version. Overall, it's a good literal translation of the Bible. But the KJV can be difficult to understand since the English language has changed significantly since the 1600s. So how do you know which English translation to choose? Before we answer that question, there's one more thing we need to note. Keep in mind that not all translations of the Bible are translations. So the first thing you'll want to do is make sure that you have a genuine translation. There are two ends of the spectrum in Bible translations. On the first end of the continuum is the most literal, which is called an interlinear translation. The interlinear is a word-for-word translation from the original language, and it is indeed the most literal possible translation. However, interlinears don't make for a good translation. They are stilted, lacking a flow that helps in understanding. In fact, they can mislead if you're not familiar with the original language. On the other end of the spectrum is the paraphrase. A paraphrase is a rewording of a text, not a translation. It is a very loose translation, if we can use that term. It is more of an explanation or interpretation. Paraphrases can be very helpful for understanding, much like a commentary is. But you are not going to get a true translation with a paraphrase. Genuine translations fall in between interlinears on one side and paraphrases on the other. In the spectrum of translations, some lean more toward paraphrases and others are more literal. We suggest that a good translation is one which is closest to the meaning of the original language and therefore one that leads toward a more literal side of the spectrum. So, from all the existing translations out there, let's simplify the selection. Here are a few good translations with their abbreviations that you might want to consider. The American Standard Version, the Contemporary English Version, the Holman Christian Standard Bible, the New Century Version, the New English Translation, the New International Version, especially the 1984 or earlier edition, and the New American Standard Bible. The best, in our opinion, is the New American Standard Bible, 1995 edition, abbreviated NASB 95. For the most part, it accurately conveys the original meaning of the language. You should find it easy to read, and with the right edition, you'll find many sufficient helps. But before you go out and buy a translation, there's more to be said. We'll cover those items in our next videos.